It's one of those reality TV moments that still has fans buzzing. How someone who once looked like a truth teller ended up being called an exaggerator, even a manipulator, by the very audience who first cheered her on. I'm talking about Veronica Peters, the woman who walked into Micah Plath's life with charm, warmth, and a whole lot of promise, only to leave behind a storm of questions that split the Welcome to Plathville fan base in half. Her rise and fall is a story you almost wouldn't believe if it hadn't played out right in front of us, and it leaves us asking one simple but complicated question. Was Veronica really telling the truth, or did fans catch her twisting it for drama? Hi friends, my name is Sophie, and welcome back to Reality Scandals Daily. If you love digging into the messy world of reality TV families and the secrets that come spilling out when the cameras start rolling, then you're in the right place. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of our breakdowns, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments because I really want to know. Where do you stand on Veronica Peters? Do you think she was exposing the Plath family's dark side, or do you think she went too far? Now, for anyone who needs a refresher, Veronica first appeared on our screens when she started dating Micah Plath. Micah's journey on Welcome to Plathville had already been a big one. Fans had watched him grow from a quiet young man raised under Barry and Kim Plath's strict conservative rules into someone carving out his own life, modeling, and figuring out what freedom actually looked like. By the time Veronica showed up, Micah was living on his own, and viewers were curious about what kind of partner he would choose after breaking free from his parents' control. At first, Veronica seemed like a breath of fresh air. She was laid back, easygoing, and she didn't shy away from being around the Plath family, even though everyone knew how complicated that dynamic could be. She wasn't just another side character. She quickly became a part of Micah's storyline, and in doing so, she was introduced to an audience that had been following the Plath family drama for years. But what started as a promising new chapter took a dramatic turn. After her breakup with Micah, Veronica began speaking out, and her claims lit up the fandom. Some people believed she was finally pulling the curtain back on what life with the Plaths was really like. Others weren't so sure. And that's where the heart of today's story lies, because what she said and what the cameras showed didn't always match. Micah's journey before Veronica even stepped into the picture was already one of the most talked about arcs on Welcome to Plathville. When the show first introduced him, Micah was quiet, respectful, and clearly shaped by Barry and Kim Plath's strict, almost suffocating rules. Like his siblings, he grew up in a household where television, social media, and even basic freedoms most teenagers take for granted were completely off limits. But Micah had something burning inside him. A drive to experience the world outside of Cairo, Georgia, and to discover who he could be when he wasn't living under his parents' constant watch. When he finally left the Plath household, fans couldn't help but root for him. Watching him take those first bold steps, moving out, dipping his toes into independence, and pursuing a modeling career was like watching a bird spread its wings for the first time. There were awkward moments, of course, and plenty of growing pains. But through it all, Micah carried himself with a determination that made viewers want to see him win. He wasn't rebelling to destroy his family. He was breaking free so he could finally breathe. And then came Veronica. To fans, she felt like a natural extension of Micah's story. If Micah was about building a new life away from the rigidity of Barry and Kim, Veronica was the person who seemed to support that transformation. She wasn't shy, she wasn't timid, and she didn't appear overwhelmed by the Plath family's larger-than-life presence. Instead, she leaned in. She laughed easily, she vibed with Micah's friends, and she gave the impression that she wanted to be a partner who encouraged his independence instead of holding him back. Viewers responded with genuine curiosity, and even a little excitement. Was this the girlfriend who would ground Micah and help him continue his journey of self-discovery? Fans were cautiously optimistic, praising her easygoing energy. Some even said she reminded them of Olivia Plath when she first entered the picture through Ethan. Olivia had also been seen as a strong-willed outsider who challenged the Plath parents' rules and gave her husband a glimpse into a different kind of life. That parallel wasn't lost on the audience. In the same way Olivia's presence had shifted the family dynamic years earlier, Veronica's appearance seemed like the start of another important chapter. At the time, nobody could have predicted how differently her story would end. But in those early days, Veronica had the fan base leaning in, ready to embrace her as part of Micah's fresh start. One of the reasons Veronica was embraced so quickly by fans wasn't just her relationship with Micah, it was the company she kept. Almost immediately, she struck up a bond with Olivia Plath. Now, if you followed Welcome to Plathville from the beginning, you know Olivia has long been seen as the family's biggest truth teller. She was the one who challenged Barry and Kim's strict rules, who openly talked about the dysfunction within the household, and who often stood as a kind of shield for Ethan against his parents' controlling ways. Viewers respected her for that. She didn't sugarcoat. She didn't play nice just to keep the peace. Olivia told it like it was. So when Veronica aligned herself with Olivia, fans didn't see it as suspicious. They saw it as confirmation. If Olivia trusted her, then Veronica must have been cut from the same cloth. Together, the two young women seemed to form a quiet resistance against the iron grip of Barry and Kim. And for fans, it was almost symbolic. Here were two outsiders who had seen through the facade of the perfect Plath family and were strong enough to speak up about it. That bond gave Veronica credibility she hadn't even fully earned yet. She didn't have to fight for the audience's trust. It was handed to her by association. That's why, when Veronica began speaking out after her breakup with Micah, the expectations were sky high. Viewers leaned in, ready to hear more about what really went on behind closed doors. People weren't just curious. They were hungry for the kind of shocking revelations only someone close to the family could provide. And Veronica delivered, or at least she seemed to. Her accusations carried a dramatic weight that couldn't be ignored. She painted pictures of control, of manipulation, of a family so rigid that it crushed individuality. And when those words came out of Veronica's mouth, they didn't sound unbelievable. Why? Because they lined up with everything fans had already suspected, everything Olivia had hinted at, everything that seemed to lurk just beneath the polished conservative image Barry and Kim presented on screen. That image, the smiling, wholesome, rule-bound Christian family, made Veronica's claims all the more explosive. The contrast between the Plath's carefully curated reputation and the darker reality Veronica described was almost too good, too juicy for fans to resist. At that moment, she wasn't just Micah's ex-girlfriend. She was a potential whistleblower, someone who might finally confirm what viewers had always suspected about life inside the Plath family. When Veronica finally began speaking out, she didn't hold back. Her claims weren't the kind of vague insinuations reality TV cast members sometimes drop to stir up attention. These were bold, direct, and packed with detail. She talked about the way the Plath family still operated under Barry and Kim's shadow, even when the cameras suggested otherwise. She hinted at patterns of manipulation, describing moments where individual voices, Micah's included, were pushed aside in favor of preserving the family's rigid image. And she didn't just point to small quirks or disagreements. She suggested that behind the smiles and the carefully staged scenes, there was control, there was emotional strain, and there was a kind of hypocrisy fans had long suspected but never fully confirmed. The impact was immediate. Fans rallied around her, praising her for her bravery and saying what others only whispered about. Comment sections lit up with words like, "Finally, we knew it," and "She's confirming everything Olivia hinted at." In that moment, Veronica wasn't just Micah's ex. She became a kind of truth warrior in the eyes of many viewers, someone unafraid to pull back the curtain on the carefully crafted Plath narrative. Online discussions exploded. Reddit threads dissected every word she said, connecting dots between her accusations and earlier storylines from the show. Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram became hotspots for theories. Was Veronica revealing what producers had been hiding? Was the next season going to expose a darker side of the Plaths that even longtime fans weren't prepared for? Anticipation started to build in a way the show hadn't seen since Olivia first began clashing with Kim and Barry on camera. And with that buzz came suspense. Fans were on edge, almost giddy, waiting to see how it would all play out when the new season dropped. Would Veronica's claims hold up once viewers saw the raw footage? Would producers dare to highlight the cracks in the Plath family's picture-perfect veneer? Or just maybe, would Veronica's words come off as exaggerated once the cameras told their side of the story? It was reality TV's perfect storm, a mix of scandal, curiosity, and the thrill of waiting for receipts. For every fan cheering Veronica on, There was another quietly grabbing popcorn, ready to scrutinize every scene for signs she was telling the truth or twisting it just enough to stay in the spotlight. Either way, Veronica had become the center of attention, and all eyes were on the upcoming season to deliver answers. And then, the tide began to turn. For weeks, Veronica's voice had been the one guiding the fan base, her words accepted as near gospel. But once the new season started airing, a different picture emerged, and it wasn't flattering for her. Suddenly, what she claimed and what the cameras actually showed didn't line up. Take, for example, one of the boldest claims she made, that Zach had been the one responsible for that infamous moment involving burning grass on the Plath property. Veronica told it with confidence, almost as if she'd been there watching it unfold. Fans nodded along, assuming they'd see the truth play out on screen. But when the episode aired, who was actually holding the match? None other than Ethan Plath himself. That contradiction didn't just raise eyebrows, it shattered some of her credibility. If she could be so wrong about something so specific, what else had she gotten twisted? The timeline of her friendship with Olivia also began to crack under scrutiny. Veronica painted a picture of being deeply bonded with Olivia long before certain events on the show. But the episodes revealed a different reality. Their closeness was newer, shakier, and not nearly as battle-tested as Veronica had suggested. The inconsistency. Eyes started to pile up, and suddenly fans weren't just listening, they were fact-checking. Even the people closest to the situation hinted at cracks in Veronica's story. Micah, though careful with his words, gave off the impression that Veronica had a tendency to embellish. Amber's comments, subtle but noticeable, suggested she too didn't always buy Veronica's version of events. And Olivia, the very ally who had once bolstered Veronica's credibility, wasn't exactly jumping to validate every detail Veronica put out there. To the fan base, that silence spoke volumes. If Olivia, the original truth-teller, wasn't co-signing Veronica's story, maybe it wasn't the unvarnished truth after all. And that's when the audience's mood shifted. The same fans who had once applauded Veronica's bravery began rolling their eyes. Support turned into skepticism. Skepticism turned into mockery. Reddit threads went from "Veronica is exposing the Plaths" to "How many times can Veronica exaggerate before she gets caught?" Memes flooded Instagram and Twitter, with captions poking fun at her creative storytelling. One meme even joked, "Next week, Veronica claims she invented fire." It wasn't just lighthearted teasing, though. Fans became amateur investigators, combing through every frame of the show, replaying scenes, cross-referencing timelines, and creating side-by-side comparisons of what Veronica had said versus what the show actually proved. The fandom that once held her up as a truth-teller had turned her into a case study in exaggeration. What was most striking was how fast it all flipped. One moment, Veronica was the brave outsider pulling back the curtain on the Plath facade. The next, she was the unreliable narrator, the person whose stories were entertaining but no longer trusted. And in reality TV, once the fan base decides you're not credible, the fall is brutal, and often permanent. If Act 5 was the unraveling, Act 6 was the collapse. What started as a wave of sympathy, for Veronica Peters quickly morphed into something far harsher: ridicule. Fans who once applauded her bravery now laughed at her expense, turning her interviews and posts into punchlines. It wasn't just that people doubted her, it was that they no longer took her seriously at all. And in the reality TV world, that shift can be fatal. One of the clearest signs came from Olivia herself. While Olivia never launched a direct attack on Veronica, her silence spoke volumes. Where once she had appeared aligned with Veronica, she began to subtly distance herself. No reposts, no enthusiastic confirmations, just a quiet step back. And for fans, that was all the confirmation they needed. Olivia's reputation as a truth-teller carried weight, and if she wasn't vouching for Veronica, then the conclusion was obvious. Maybe Veronica's stories weren't so trustworthy after all. Micah and Amber added to that perception, each in their own way. Micah, careful not to stir unnecessary drama, made passing comments that hinted Veronica had a flair for exaggeration. Amber, too, dropped remarks that suggested the same. Neither needed to mount a full defense against her. Just a few carefully chosen words were enough for viewers to connect the dots. It was the final nudge many fans needed to write Veronica off entirely. The fact-checking culture of the fan base sealed her fate. This wasn't 2005 when reality stars could make sweeping claims with little pushback. This was the age of Reddit detectives, TikTok breakdowns, and side-by-side video comparisons. Every word Veronica spoke was measured against what the cameras showed, and time after time she came up short. Once the audience saw the cracks, they pulled the whole structure apart. And so, the narrative collapsed. Veronica went from being seen as Micah's brave, outspoken ex-girlfriend to a cautionary tale of what happens when exaggeration collides with footage. Fans had been eager, almost desperate to believe her, but the moment her words stopped aligning with what they could see for themselves, the trust was gone, and with it, her credibility. The lesson couldn't be clearer, not just for Veronica, but for anyone stepping into the world of reality TV. In today's climate, you can't get away with half-truths or embellished stories. The audience isn't passive anymore. They're investigators, critics, and archivists, with the receipts at their fingertips. If your story doesn't line up with the footage, they'll call you out, and they'll do it loudly. For Veronica Peters, that meant her time in the spotlight ended not with applause, but with a collective shake of the head. Sympathy turned to skepticism, and skepticism turned into the kind of mockery that's nearly impossible to come back from. And so, as Veronica Peters faded from the spotlight, her story left behind more than just a trail of drama. It became a case study in how reality television has changed. Once upon a time, audiences were content to sit back and let the producers spin whatever narrative they pleased. But not anymore. Today's viewers are active participants, detectives, armed with pause buttons, Reddit threads, and social media platforms where every inconsistency can be dissected within hours. Veronica's downfall wasn't just about her. It was about a larger truth. The audience has become the judge, the jury, and sometimes even the executioner. They don't wait for reunion specials to get their answers. They hold reality stars accountable in real time. And in that environment, credibility isn't just important, it's everything. For Veronica, credibility slipped through her fingers the moment her words stopped matching the footage. Sympathy transformed into doubt, and doubt hardened into ridicule. And the brutal truth is this: once trust is broken in the court of public opinion, it almost never returns. Reality stars can reinvent themselves, they can rebrand, they can even apologize, but rarely do they ever regain the same level of life they once enjoyed. The emotional punch of this story lies in the fine line Veronica stumbled over. There's a world of difference between being hailed as a whistleblower and being dismissed as a manipulator. And that difference boils down to a single factor: consistency with the truth. Fans will rally behind someone who tells it straight, even if it's messy, painful, or controversial. But the second they sense exaggeration, the whole narrative collapses. That's the moral of Veronica Peters' story. In an age where audiences aren't just watchers but watchdogs, reality stars have to choose carefully: tell the truth or risk being exposed by the very fans who once cheered them on. And with that, this has been Sophie with Reality Scandals Daily. What do you think? Was Veronica Peters unfairly judged, or did she dig her own hole by stretching the facts? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. And don't forget, if you love diving into the drama behind reality TV, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a breakdown. Until next time, remember, in reality TV, the cameras might capture the action, but it's the fans who decide what's real.